Betul tak? Okey, jadi ini sebenarnya satu perumpamaan secara lisan ya. Sebab setiap orang mempunyai ceritanya tersendiri. Tapi tak ada yang kebenaran sebenarnya. There's no truth really. And that's not what we are here to do either. You know, it's not a truth finding mission. Okay? Because setiap orang yang anda temu ramah akan ada ceritanya sendiri. Walaupun mengenai peristiwa yang sama, tapi mereka punya semua ada pandangan dan pengalaman yang sendiri ya. Jadi seperti tadi Sharon yang berkata, mungkin kamu rasa tidak patutnya macam ni, mesti kena seksa juga masa musim Jepun kan. Tapi sebenarnya tak, dia kata okey, bagus dapat makanan daripada tentera Jepun dan sebagainya. So mungkin tidak kena dengan apa yang kamu expect ya. Dan juga semua orang ada pengalaman masing-masing. Jadi ini seperti kata Diana tadi, makna tu yang penting. Kita bukan nak mencari fakta atau kebenaran, tapi makna sesuatu peristiwa atau pengalaman itu kepada orang yang kita temu ramah atau narasumber kita ya, atau narrator kita. Jadi seperti saya cakap tadi ya, the same event may have different meanings for different people. And this is what oral history is about, is allowing for space for different types of voices. Yeah? Voices, in particular voices that have been marginalized, that have been hidden, that have not given space to be able to be heard. Yeah? And it's less of a fact-finding mission than about understanding different experiences. It's not about looking for one truth. So you can't say that's a picture of two old men, you know, two elders, but other people might see, you know, two people playing guitar instead. So you can't say you are right, yeah? There's not just one truth. All right, so bearing that in mind, you know, we have to think about that when we were doing the preparation as well, yeah? So I've divided up the preparation stages into 6 before you go out to interview. And I'll go through each one of them, yeah? First, setting goals, identifying narrators, conducting the background research, constructing an interview guide, setting an appointment, and preparing the interview toolkit. So, okay. But we will provide, we can email you the PowerPoint, okay? No problem. Okay. Nowadays people don't take notes anymore, they just take pictures. All right. So first you want to set your goals, yeah? Decide your project objectives and scope. What are your goals? Sebenarnya apa yang anda berminat untuk belajar atau mengetahui lebih lanjut, ya? Adakah sebab nak memastikan cerita-cerita mengenai keluarga anda didokumentasi, you know? So you've decided you want to interview your grandmother so that the story is kept within your family. Or you might want to understand, or you want to learn more about your own organization. You know, you want to know the history of Awam. You want to know about the women's participation in Awas. So you might have and having these goals help you focus your project. But your goals may also change. Yeah, so along the way you might find other interesting story and then you want to focus on that. But it helps to have somewhat of an idea what you want to look at, because you know time is limited, resources is limited, so it's good to have some sort of objective, yeah? And what kind of approach do you want to take? Do you want to do a life histories approach? For example, you know, if you're interviewing your grandmother, you want to know, you know, dari lahir sampai sekarang sejarah hidup dia, belajar di mana, sekolah di mana, bagaimana keadaan di kampung dan sebagainya. Atau nak fokus pada tema-tema, ya, macam tadi Diana kata, place, space. Mungkin place tu semua orang yang duduk di jalan Shinjuku. Jadi nak tahu cerita hidup mereka dan related to the place, ya. Or an event, you want to do research on the different experiences of May 13th, for example. So it revolves around the event. So these are theme-based approach. Yeah? So you can think about that, and of course they can overlap. I think Diana also mentioned earlier, you want to understand about the event or the place, you also need to know a little bit about the life story of the person, so they can also overlap. Yeah? And I mentioned before, your goals may change, and it's okay. You can be flexible about it. Second, you have an idea what you want to learn, what your objectives are. You want to start identifying who are the narrators or your resource persons. Yeah. So first, to do that, you might have to do some research on the subject matter. Yeah. For example, you want to look at a strike that happened in KL. So you start thinking who were involved. There were the teachers, the students that were there, maybe the police officers, and then you can start narrowing down who do you think you can interview within those different groupings. Yeah. You might ask also people around you. You can ask for recommendations, especially people who's been around during that generation. They can recommend for you who you can interview. And you should also always consider people very close to you. They're the greatest resource persons. They're available, they're there, they want to tell their story usually, and you already have established a rapport. So, don't discard the just because you see your grandmother every day doesn't mean that she doesn't have any more interesting stories to tell you. So that's also a very important resource. Yeah? The third stage is that you need to do some research work. Yeah? To be a good interviewer, you should be an informed interviewer. So you want to do some research of the background of the narrator, the event, or the theme that you're looking at, and the larger historical context. So you want to look at the existing information, biographies, articles, books. So you say if you're interviewing Dr. Said, you want to have read his biography before you interview him, okay? Because if not, you'll be asking the same stories that he's already written. You're wasting his time, and you're not getting any other additional new information. So you need to do some research. So you need to know as much as you can. But not everyone would have had written records. Not everyone you can Google and wiki, okay? So you want to learn more about the context of the time. You're looking at Japanese occupation. You need to learn more. When did it happen? What was the situation in Malaysia at that time, Malaya at that time? So find out more about the context by reading books, history books, maybe even reading some novels about that time, just to understand the context. Yeah. And also, being an informed interviewer is not just important in the sense that it gives you, it allows you to ask good questions. It also creates rapport with your narrator because they know that you're serious about this subject matter. You know about it. You understand the situation. Should they refer to something at that time, you get it. You don't have to ask so many questions that are so basic. Oh ya ke musim Jepun apa jadi kan masa Jepun tu mana British masa tu. So you already know some of these basic information. So you already show that you're very earnest and interested. Yeah. Oh no, I missed that one. If studying an event, make sure you research the historical and political context. So try to find out as much information that you have available. It just gives you a background. It's not to say that it's supposed to guide how you look at the story that you get from the resource person, but it allows you a context. Yeah? I'm sorry I'm speaking English because it's faster when I do that. Okay. The fourth is you need to start constructing an interview guide. And the interview guide is not a questionnaire. Don't get me wrong, it's not a questionnaire. It's not a check. It's not you ask each of the question, macam survey question. It's just a guide. It allows you to focus a little bit more when you go and ask the person. Maybe you're nervous. You might forget some things that you want to ask. Like Maimuna Rohana said, time is limited. So sometimes you already gone there. You come back. You're like, I should have asked this one thing, which you're very interested in, but you forgot because of the time and space. So it's good to just have this jotted down so that it'll guide you when you are ready to go to your interview. Yeah? Also, if you're doing multiple interviews on a topic, the guide will help you ensure that you ask the same questions to different people. So if you're looking at experiences of the Japanese occupation, for example, and you will be interviewing many different people. So it helps to have some sort of guide so that you will also ask the same questions, but maybe you'll expand on different questions depending on the narrator. But it just helps to have some basic information if you want to know about the particular place and time. Yeah. The interview guide is open-ended. Open-ended questions are best for allowing for narrators to share information. So again, it's not about asking them yes or no kind of questions. But you know, ask them. It could be like cerita macam mana pengalaman makcik masa zaman Jepun dulu. You know, makan apa masa tu. So you don't ask, oh mesti tak makan dulu kan, tak ada nasi dulu. So you're already making assumption. So you ask more open-ended, macam tu, macam mana dapat makanan, bapa pergi ke mana untuk membeli makanan. So make it open-ended so they can have more space to tell their story. The other thing is that even if you're focusing on specific themes, the basic information, the life stories of the person is also still very useful, especially just basic data like when they were born, where were they born, about their parents. Those are kind of things that it's good to have so that when someone else listens to your recording, it gives them a little bit more context to the narrator. Yeah? So some of these basic information is good to have even though you're focusing on the specific issue. Say you want to look at sejarah penubuhan pergerakan wanita and you interview all these different women including maybe Cecilia. Yeah. So maybe your questions, you want to know how did she started and all this, but it's good to also find out where she was born, what did her parents do, where did she go to school, what motivated her, was she also involved in activism in school, So these kinds of things are also useful, not just when she's in the pergerakan wanita dah. Okay. So these are some examples of what I mean by interview guide. It doesn't have to be question. It could be just writing down what are some of the themes that you want to ask. So this is an example of a life history guide. So you want to start from their date of birth, place of birth, the parents, about their childhood, education, their work, marriage and family, and then say there's a specific theme that you want to focus on, then you can ask more questions about that specific theme. Yeah. This is an example of a theme-focused guide. Say you want to know what happened during May 13. So you can ask about, you start by asking how old were you when that happened, how did you learn about it, where were you when you heard stories about violence breaking out, can you tell me more what you saw, the good and the bad, recalling the details. How did this event affected you, your family, your community at the time? What happened after? How has this experience impacted your life? Do you still talk about it? So you can ask these questions and many more. Usually as a rule of thumb, I don't know if other researchers do this, I try to limit my questions to 10 because I feel like more than that is just too much, especially in one go. So I try to limit at least less than 10. Especially with the time frame that we have. Then the next meeting you can have more questions maybe. But you don't want to overwhelm, as Rohana said, you don't want to overwhelm your narrator as well. Yeah? So these are just some examples. And really it depends on your focus and goals again, yeah? How you do the interview guide. Okay, important to remember is do not be alarmed if your interviewee or your narrator goes off topic. Totally off topic. You want to talk about Japanese occupation, she talks about something else altogether. Talks about how she met her husband or whatever. It's okay, maybe there's something really interesting there and that's the story she wants to tell you and she wants to share with you. So be flexible, and sometimes these off topics are the most interesting actually. It'll lead you to something that no one else have heard about, So pay attention to those things too. All right, fifth, set an appointment. So you've identified your narrator. Well, you've set up, you've decided what your goal is. You identified your narrator. You've created your interview guide, and now you're ready to set an appointment. Yeah. So these are very practical things, which I think all of you know, but just it's helpful to just reiterate. So first you want to, of course, introduce yourself and the project. If the narrator was someone that was referred to you, it's good to tell that person, you know, Maimuna had referred me to you, because it always helps. Anything that can create rapport in a faster way with your narrator is a good thing, you know. If someone very well respected had recommended you, mention it. Jangan malu-malu to use. It's not name dropping. It's helping facilitate the relationship. And choose a time most convenient for narrator. I know, as someone mentioned before, that's the most important person. It's not about you, your time, it's about their time. Yeah. So try to work within the narrator's time frame. Now, if possible, this is not always possible, if possible, have a casual pre-interview meeting with the narrator where you can explain more about the project and just get them a bit ready. You know, what is it that you want to know? It might be in the context that, you know, you're dekat Kenduri, lepas tu you dah jumpa Tok Chu tu, lepas tu katalah, saya ni nak buat interview, boleh tak nanti saya call dan kita boleh duduk nak cerita pasal ni. So dia tanya nak buat interview untuk apa, dan bolehlah cerita sikit in a more casual manner, ya. Kalau ada peluang, mungkin nak interview Diana Wong lepas ni, je hari ni ambil kesempatan tanya, Diana boleh tak nanti saya call you sebab saya minat nak interview. So it just gives a time for the resource person also, yeah. Alright, if that's possible. If after you set your appointment, it's a good thing to just confirm the appointment a day or two before, you know, by calling, just to make sure that they've not forgotten, to let them know you've not forgotten either. So it's just a good policy for anything lah, kan? And of course, please keep your appointment. Jangan last minute, alamak, tak habis assignment. Tak apalah, Tok Chu, sebab nanti kan Kenduri next week dia akan jumpa, tapi kita tak pasti, jadi please keep your appointments, it's very important. It's like meeting a boss also, treat it as important as that. Okay, some things that's important to remember in terms of time. Be sure to allocate enough time for the interview. At the same time, be mindful of the narrator's time and comfort level. So don't set appointment where you have to leave in, like, you know, within an hour and a half you have to leave already, because you'll be rushing. What if there's something really interesting that the person is telling, and then you say, oh, I have to go now. So you're truncating, stopping halfway, kan? So make sure you give enough time. Usually, I don't know, like usually 1 to 2 hours is good time, yeah. Also, you don't want to exhaust the person. So because sharing is quite exhausting, you know, at the end of the sharing session, the narrator pun dah letih. Terutamanya kalau kita interview orang yang lebih tua juga, kan, dia sangat letih. Kita tak nak dia pun rasa terlampau membebankan, ya. Venue, choose to meet at a venue that is comfortable for the narrator, and you have to remember you're going to record. So, you know, loud, very noisy coffee shops are not ideal because there's a lot of background noise. So just bear in mind, you know, don't put your recorder near a fan, because then you'll be like, dengar bunyi, the background noise, yeah, things like that. But sometimes you can't help it, you know, but try to consider the ambience. And, you know, the narrator's home is always a nice place to interview if they invite you to their homes, because, you know, they're more comfortable and they might have things on hand to also show you, you know, old pictures, photos. So it's quite nice space if you can be able to do that. But, you know, don't of course, you know, only if they offer lah. They might not want to have people come to their house, only if they offer. All right. How am I doing on time? Okay. I have a few more slides. Time ready, okay. All right, the last part, the interview toolkit. So what should you have? So you should you should have some sort of prepare an interview toolkit. And what you want is to have your interview guide with you, your recording device. I don't know where my recording device is. Your notebook and pen. And some memory prompts. I'll tell you a bit more what I mean by it. And then For PSR, we have our info sheet and also the release forms, which tomorrow Heng Ling and Juliet will talk more about. Yeah. So in terms of recording equipment, I think all of you have one that you have access to one. So as much as possible, use the best quality recorder you have. It doesn't mean that buy the most expensive one. You might use your phone, that's fine. Just make sure that it works well. And be familiar with it. Jangan masa hari tu pula nak testing, tak pernah try. Masa tu terkial-kial nak cari mana nak record ke tak. And it has happened before, okay? So test it before you interview. Make sure it's fully charged. Also, this is true story, has happened before. And bring extra batteries, or if you need a charger, bring that. And also, if yours has limited capacity, make sure you bring extra memory card. Yeah, it seems like very like benda remeh-temeh, tapi sangat penting. Terutamanya kalau kita buat recording oral history ni, sejarah lisan. Okay, some things that's important to remember, and tomorrow we'll go more over it about this consent. You need to ask permission to record the interview. That's very important. And you want to explain the purpose of your recording. And the narrator can request for the recording to be stopped at any moment, and you have to respect that, yeah? And if permission is granted, make sure you turn on your recorder and double check. Nothing worse than finishing a really good interview and then looking at your phone and seeing that you had turned it off. True story also. Has happened to me once, and I lost the interview because midway through the recording, my phone rang, and so I turned it off, and I forgot to turn it back on. Okay, that's another lesson: turn off your phone. Okay, because you can't get back that time anymore. Okay, yeah, it's a true facepalm moment. All right, just now I think I mentioned that. At the start of your recording, it's just good practice to record the name again. Just say, the name of the person and the age at the start of the interview, just so that it'd be easier for when we do the storage for identification, and for you also as you manage your data. So I think I won't go too much into this. Of course, your notebook, I don't know, people don't seem to have notebooks and pens anymore these days. They use their camera phone, but it's a good idea to have a notebook. And I put that picture of the guy in the student, because sometimes I feel like that with my students because they don't seem to take any notes, But it's a good idea to have a dedicated notebook, not the same notebook that you used to put down your recipes or whatnot, just a different notebook. And jot down the notes, but don't get too distracted with taking notes, because you want to also focus on listening, right? And also, I know some people like to take notes straight on the computer or on your phone. I wouldn't advise it, because I find it very distracting, and I think people of an older generation find it even more distracting as well, because it's just a different medium. Because I see students do this all the time. They like talk to you and I find it very strange, but I think for them it's like, for your generation maybe it's something biasa, but I think try to avoid that. Yeah, old paper and pen is good. All right, be a good listener. So the other thing I mentioned that you might want to have in your toolkit are memory prompts, and what I mean by these are things that will trigger the conversation, and might be photos, posters, illustrations. Like these are of KL in the 1960s. So if you want to know more about KL in the 1960s, maybe you want to bring some of these pictures or books, and it'll start the conversation going. Yeah, they're good ways to prompts. This is something that I use for the Life Stories project that I'm doing with Sisters in Islam, and this was developed by an NGO in Indonesia, and it's just like a simple diagram of the different life phases, but it's useful also for me to remind myself, like, if I've covered all these different aspects of the person's life. It's a very simple illustration. So these are just like tools that you can use, but you don't have to. Yeah. All right, and I thought something just now when Diana was talking about all these different types of memories. or how memories are captured in place and things like that. I was thinking food could also be a really nice trigger. You know, you're talking about, you know, the old days and, you know, how women spend a lot of time preparing. So those are also nice things that could be good prompts for discussion. And then included in the toolkit are the consent forms. Yeah, so I won't go too much into this because tomorrow you'll be discussing more on this. All right, so we've gone through all these pre-interview checklists. So you are now ready for your interview. Okay?